Jack, hello, welcome to your first accountability session.
It's a pleasure.
You're the returning president of our SAUWS at UWS. So before we get into the questions, why don't you tell us a bit, very quickly, how it's going in your second year as president?
It's going really good so far. I think last year there was a lot of challenges along the way, but now we're in a stage where we've got a turnaround board in place, which is actually helping us a lot of the activities, and it's developing the student association quite quickly. So I'm pleased with how the first trimester of my second year is going. I think we've got a fantastic team, really good team this year. Looking forward to working the rest of the year with them, and I think they're great.
Okay, so we'll start with your manifesto when you were campaigning to be president, and can you tell us a bit on how you based this campaign manifesto on student needs rather than what you think the university needs?
Yeah, I think that's the way you need to do it. I mean, if you don't base it on student needs, and if students see that you're only basing it on what the university wants, you're not going to get elected, you're not going to get voted in. So no, I think what I did with my manifesto is I looked and I was talking to students throughout my first year and saying what more could we do at the student association, what more can we build on our previous work, and that's how I really created the manifesto, and that's how it ended up being elected.
So we're going to start discussing a few things of your manifesto, and just to see basically where you are with what you've said that you will do within your year as president. A big point in your election campaign was your funding, and there was two things that you brought forward for that, was the free education and the summer support. How are you ensuring that these are under consideration?
Well, the reason that I brought those two onto my manifesto, the first one was in my first year where a student came in, and to be quite frank, it was throughout the summer, and to be quite frank, she was starving. And that was the first implication. We were looking for funding and ways that we can support her. We ran out of our own discretionary fund, so we couldn't help her there. The university ran out of their fund, and there was no money from SAUWS, obviously, to help her through. So she was faced with a really difficult decision. Does she drop out of university, or does she live in really harsh poverty for the rest of her summer? And that's a decision that no student should ever have to make. It's totally inhumane, and why it's happening in this day and age. So that's why I brought that on. The reason why I brought free education in is that it was actually being questioned about by some of the senior officials with our university, and I just thought that this argument has been won time and time again. And I think really what we should be looking at is we should be looking to expand free education. The argument shouldn't just be to defend it. So that's why I put those two in. What I'm doing about it this year is we have the Scottish elections that are coming up as well, and I really want to make sure that those two things are being talked about, they're being debated about, that parties are coming out and saying that they're willing to keep free education in Scotland, and that they want to extend it at the same time boosting up student support. So I've been really active with NUS in this, so I sit on NUS's executive committee. What we've done, and it was just the other week as well, is we managed to get summer support into the main three asks. So their three asks will be an entitlement for FE students, for college students, mental health and support over the summer. So those will be the great big three aims, and I think we've done a fantastic job at the Student Association in highlighting that issue and making sure it's a priority for NUS. For free education as well, what we're doing for the Scottish election is we pass policy to make sure a demonstration happens, that we use every single tactic in the book, and that then will be there to defend and extend free education, as well as making sure that those free asks go through and that politicians listen to students.
The ICT project was on your manifesto as well, and that started last year. How do you make sure that the students' voices and opinions are taken into consideration in every step of this £12 million ICT project?
Yeah, so just to give a bit of context to that £12 million, the university invested or said that they were going to invest £12 million to ICT, and recently we've partnered up with BT, so that's now going ahead and happening. What we did last year is we did a number of focus groups because we thought that deal was going to come sooner. It didn't. We had a number of focus groups around Paisley, Ayr and Hamilton. We did some online consultation with them, free students. will be doing something very similar this year. Even ICT DS, they want to do more, they want to take more responsibility for consultating with students. So there's been a culture change within that department where they want students to be engaging, they want to be talking to students because they want to improve as much as students do. So we want to gather student opinion once again through those focus groups. I want to push it a little bit harder, I want to make sure more students are coming along to those sessions. But at the same time I sit on the committees for these groups, so I sit on the Technology Advisory Committee, and what I do from them is with the student opinions that are collected, I'll be making sure that they're listened to and that they're being acted on in these committees.
We had a bit of issues with the union last year. So with regards to that, you've said you will increase resources around the representation campaigns and activities of the union. How are you doing this?
So that's already happened. So at the very start of the year I sat on the Board of Trustees, and something I demanded quite strongly was saying that we need to be giving more resources to our membership activities, and that's now happened. They've got the biggest budget that they've ever had before. We want to go further though, because it's still not enough, and students, our biggest aim, our biggest job at this organisation is to represent our students. So that should be at the core of everything we do. That should be there. So the resource needs to be there. What the Board of Trustees is doing, they have a 3-year financial plan that's coming into place to improve the financial state of the student association. So that will improve as time goes on, as our finances are slowly being fixed.
Accommodation. How will you be increasing guidance with regards to accommodation?
Yep. So last year we had this online site called Village Digs that we partnered up with someone. That didn't really work. Students didn't really attach onto that. So going into this year, what I want to make sure is that the Students' Association is taking more responsibility onto this. What we're doing at the moment is we're in talks with the accommodation department at UWS, saying what advice we can give to students. But when trimester 1 finishes and students go back to trimester 2, what I want to be doing is I want to be asking those students that how was you living away from home in trimester 1? Did you enjoy it? Is there any pieces of advice that you would have liked to receive in trimester 1? So getting their experience really, and then putting those pieces of advice in place for the next cohort of students coming to UWS.
And what is the current situation with the West of Scotland Housing Co-op?
Sorry about that. So what we're doing at the moment is I was in discussion with NUS to see what were some of the things that Edinburgh University has done around this. So they've created their own housing co-op, and it's a brilliant idea because students all around our 4 campuses in Scotland have a problem. Do they go to the university accommodation, which, to be quite frank, is quite high in price, or do they go to the local accommodation? Do they get private rent? Problem with that is what's surrounding Air Hamilton, Paisley and Dumfries can be lots of dodgy landlords. So looking at that, I thought well, maybe we could do something very similar to what Edinburgh's doing. So I'm looking for advice from NUS to how to take this forward. At the same time, I think this could be something that's brilliant for not just UWS students, but students all around the west of Scotland. So I'm in talks with student associations in Glasgow and other places in the west of Scotland to see if there's something that we could all do together to actually create a west of Scotland housing co-op.
That's everything that we've looked at for your manifesto. You'll remember that we exchanged an email where I asked you a few questions on how you're getting on and things like that. So the next section covers that. You got feedback from 100 students regarding the Scottish elections. Was this the target amount of students? Were they selected, or was it just random 100 students? Why so few, and do you feel they represent the majority of the students?
Okay, so those 100 students were in a 3-day period. So what we did at our freshers' fairs is we were asking students left, right and centre, what are the 3 big priorities do you want for the Scottish elections to create our aims. So those 100 students were just in those 3 days time period. What we've also been doing is every time I go out talking to students, I'm asking what's your big concerns at the moment. We're using stuff like that. So it wasn't just 100 students, it was just 100 students in 3 days. So if we take it in that context, I actually think consulting with students for their great big 3 main priorities for the Scottish elections over 3 days, I think that's really good.
Okay. Do you feel they represent the majority?
I do. Within that 3 day period, if we did that alone in isolation, probably not. But we're still talking to students. We're still asking them for those three big asks and what are their current concerns. So I think as soon as you pair those two together, yes, I do. I think it's absolutely representative of students in the west of Scotland.
Rent controls and no-fault evictions within the Scottish Government. How are you going about this? What is the status, and how are you feeding back information to the students regarding this?
So one of the things that we've done is we partnered up with the Living Rent campaign, which looked at this at the housing bill going through, and that was their two big things: is ending the no-fault evictions as well as rent controls. We've been discussing with politicians around this, and one of the big political figures that we managed to get on board backing our campaign and the Living Rent campaign was Mary Black, the MP for Paisley. And as soon as she got on board, other politicians got on board as well, and it was almost like a domino effect, which was really good. And what's happened now is the Scottish Government has added that to their bill. They've taken away the no-fault evictions and put some elements of rent controls. We want them to go a little bit further though, but we'll see how the rest of the process goes. But you're probably right. I think we do need to be talking to students a little bit more about that and saying that actually this has actually been quite a big win for students in the University of West Scotland, and we should maybe celebrate that a little bit more.
So, are you feeding back to the students at all at the moment?
For the students have asked, but I think what we will do is we did a couple of news stories on it, but from actually today and from that question, what I'll do is we'll do some more communication with students and ask them also how much further do you want this to go, because it talks about rent restriction, rent controls in some areas, but not all of them. And me personally, I would like to see them going a lot further and actually looking at all of them. I know all areas should have some element of rent controls. So yeah, I will be going away and talking to students about that and seeing where they want us to go from here.
ICT. What is the percentage of students' opinion that you've gained in this area? It's asking again, how can you guarantee it's taken into account, but I think we've covered that already. And do you feel that the feedback supports the university for the future, or is it just what we need right now?
I think it will. I think really the learning spaces that we put in, and even simple things like Wi-Fi, this is all going to come into play in the future. Some of the technology and some of the software that's discussed over there is actually really impressive, and it's something that I think that we should have had in place a long time ago. We'll be consulting students on this, so we'll be partnering up with ICT DS and making sure that they're consulting students and having those focus groups. I want to get a higher amount of students in those focus group meetings than we did last year. And as I said earlier on, I sit on these committees, so I'll be making sure that that student feedback gets applied in these areas.
So do you have quite a high percentage of students involved, or?
Last year I think we got more than we were expecting. I think for this and for something like which is quite complicated as technology, sometimes I think what we need is a lot of qualitative feedback rather than just quantitative data. So it's looking at really, seeing if we can get some gold dust in there and seeing what students are saying and really getting some qualitative information out there.
The summer dropout figures. You've said that this could mean that there's no financial support, but it could also be for other reasons like struggling with the course.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find out the actual reasons people have dropped out, and how will you support them for leaving for different reasons, not just financial?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, not all students who drop out in the summer do so for financial reasons. I think it's a definite reason why students are dropping out, don't get me wrong. But no, I think some will be looking over the summer and thinking maybe university's not the right place for me. But we need to be supporting those students in the right way. I'm in talks with NUS Scotland. NUS Scotland did a lot of research around student support last year, and some of that was to do with the summer. So I'm asking for that information at the moment and seeing if we can break that down to discover actually what is the percentage. If we don't, we'll be doing our own research around that as well, just to get some more qualitative information out of that. We've got a lot of figures around how many students are dropping out, more students drop out in the summer than they do at any other period of the year. If you're a woman, you're more likely to drop out in the summer. So these are worrying facts that we want to sort, but we'll be doing further research to distinguish why. Universities also have a responsibility in this, that making sure that, you know, students don't need to go to the summer and then just not have any communication with the university. I think the university should be communicating with their students. And I think that's probably one thing, that students feel isolated over the summer and they're out of touch with the university over that period of time. And that's not just a UWS problem, that's a problem across Scotland as well. So these are big, huge sector issues that need to get fixed across Scotland.
So are you planning to fix them?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's all based on that research that we get on on those findings, and we need to find the findings. We need to see what they say first before we say anything. But I think really it's trying to make sure, for those other reasons other than financial, is that universities take on more of a responsibility. So, for example, is that their personal tutors get in touch with them, is that their courses saying, how are you doing with your resets? Because some students who have resets over the summer, you know, they don't have any communication until they actually ever submit the work, or they come back in to do their exam. And I think there needs to be a lot of communication around there. But we need to see what those findings say first, and then we can act on them.
We're moving on to the next section now. There is an area on the Students' Association website where students can anonymously send in some questions, and I have received a few for you. So we'll be doing that now. What is the union doing to raise with the upper tiers of the faculty in regard the issue of all the money spent on the different campuses around the world, London and Dubai? This is not UWS, not UWW, and the overly expensive makeover in the entrance at A Block, huge TV included, yet are not replacing staff that are crucial to the running of the university. For example, a technician in the psychology lab has retired and not been replaced. This impacted the use of the software for dissertations.
What can you say about that?
No, I think that's a phenomenally good question. And it would be really good if we could talk to that student about that individual case of that member of staff going away and not being replaced. Just to be clear about the university's campuses that are out with Scotland, what they're doing is that's a source of income. So it's not them just throwing money at elsewhere in the world, they're using it as a way to build revenue. What we're really cautious about at the moment is that there seems to be lots of universities. So for example, Glasgow Caledonia University in New York didn't have any students in there. For 2 years, a university in Wales just had to close down their London campus. That was because they didn't get their licences. Now UWS down in London does have its licence, which is really good. But at the same time, we're quite cautious about it. So we are keeping a close eye onto that. The university is also expanding. It's spending to stuff like learning areas as well, not just stuff like reception and not just stuff like campuses overseas. So they are looking at all these things at the moment. But we are quite cautious. But I would love to talk to that student to just get that individual case of that member of staff.
The next one I have has got 2 points, which I'm going to read exactly as they've put it. Also, whilst the new cafeteria offers hot food, it is now inaccessible to those with wheelchairs and mobility aids. Why did they not just upgrade the old ones? What do the elected representatives plan to do in regards to raising such issues?
So that student isn't the only one to bring up that. There's been quite a few to say that the new space isn't accessible, not in just terms of getting food, but actually just moving about the space in general. Actually, to try and get into some of the areas in that space it's hellish for some people with mobility issues. So I'm in talks with the Dean of Students right now, just sorting them out, and I'm in talks with some other university members of staff to sort that place out a little bit more. They want to expand that area as well, so there'll be lots of changes to that over time, lots of new things happening with the library and the design of that and how student services go down there. We'll be talking to more students about that in the upcoming weeks. So we are in talks to sort that out.
I had an email that had a large amount of information requested from a specific student, and I feel that it's too big to cover
Okay.
in the limited time that we have in these recordings. So what I'm going to do is email this to you, and when you answer, we will get the answers added to the area that these recordings will be, so that that student and any other student can go and read up on the answers to all those questions.
That's great.
Okay. The last one in this area is about our student voice, and this student says that having student voice on a Wednesday actively excludes students who are involved with Team UWS. Our members are by far the most engaged with the Students' Association, and there is absolutely no way we can not have our fixtures on Wednesday. So there doesn't seem to be a question in there, but if you could comment on that, please.
That's fine. With regards to who's most engaged in what area, I think there's lots of different students engaged with lots of things, and I don't think it's a competition to see who's more engaged with the others. For example, we've got hundreds of students who are student reps who do lots of work within their institution. We've got lots of people involved in our environmental activities, and we've got lots of students who actually like to go to our commercial services, like to go to our events as well. So there's lots of different bits of engaged, and I think it's just trying to make sure that you can get all those students. Wednesdays are off for not just sport, but extracurricular activities as well. So it's absolutely anything that isn't in the curriculum, any voluntary things that you need to do can be done on a Wednesday afternoon. What I would say, the person who has responsibility over student voice is yourself, Anne. So if any students have any issues around with the timings of it, I would say for them to present that to you. But the reason why it's on a Wednesday is because it's for extracurricular activities in general, not just sport.
I now have a section of my own questions that I've come up with for you. And we'll start with the renting accommodation. Over the summer, I personally had some issues getting rental accommodation because of my student status. And I contacted SAUWS, and they advised me to contact accommodation services for assistance. I did that, telling them the issue and that I couldn't find a place to rent for myself and two children. And they've never answered me.
Never at all?
Never.
Okay.
So how many students do you think may be in the same situation? And what will you do about this, considering that this is a very big part of your manifesto?
No, absolutely. I haven't had any other students saying that they've had a lack of engagement around that department, but what I will do is I'll talk to the rest of our team at SAUWS to see if there's been any other issues similar to yourself. And what we will do is there's lots of changes to student services at the moment, how they're structured. So within that process, I'll be bringing that up and making sure that gets fixed. But hopefully, when we bring forward the thing that I was talking about earlier around our advice around accommodations, hopefully that'll help out students in the summer find reasonable accommodation as well. But I'm unsure why they didn't help you because of your student status. But I'll talk to you later, and we'll work together to help sort that out.
Dumfries. Dumfries is part of UWS, but it's left out in so many campaigns. Should this be this way? And what do the Dumfries students feel about this?
I think Dumfries students feel disappointed in the past that the lack of engagement around Dumfries has just been next to nothing, really. This is because the Dumfries have their own student association, because lots of institutions operate in that campus. So it's not just UWS, it's also the Highlands and Islands institution, it's also the University of Glasgow colleges operate in there as well. So there's one overarching student association, and the feedback that I've been getting from Dumfries students is that's not working in terms of representation. So what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at ways to just take responsibility over represent our Dumfries students and taking that back. We have our first representative ever elected from Dumfries. His name is Sam. So if any students in Dumfries have anything that they want to bring forward, which is campus specific, they could talk to Sam. But yeah, we're taking responsibility over that, because you're absolutely right. In the past, students haven't had the right representation down there, and we want to fix that.
How many emails, tweets, and Facebook statuses are from the university as a whole to students per day? How do you ensure that yours get read and taken into account and not lost in a sea of possibly irrelevant information?
That's a really, really good question. The first part, the answer to your first part is students get tons of emails, not just from the university, not just from their course people, but sometimes us as well. We want to be surveying student opinion and saying, like, what are your views around these areas, so we can bring that to the university and really make some positive changes. What I sit on at the moment is the university's, it's called an events committee, but it does a lot more than that. And what it's looking at right now is looking at around how we communicate with students. A lot of their communication plans is around how do they communicate stuff to staff, but why are we not including students in that? So right now what I'm doing is we're looking at that, we're looking at different areas. So they're looking at things like, what about a student portal? So when you log in, there's lots of information that SAUWS is providing, but also the university, and that's in a way where it doesn't bog you down. It's a nice, comfortable, presentable way that's presented to you. So I'm working on that team at the moment to see how we can better communicate with students and just making sure that our emails aren't being lost, but also their important emails aren't being lost through the hurricane of messages that students get each and every day.
Okay, that's good. Do you think it's fair that every campus has free parking except Paisley?
So I think when it comes to basic things like that, and a campus doesn't have it, that's not good enough at all. So when we're on these committees, I haven't had too many students saying that to me recently, actually. But I would actually be, I would like to hear more views around that of students if they're struggling to find parking in Paisley, and how much is it costing them to drive into campus each day, and we can happily pretty much bring that up with the university. But at the same time, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that students are picking sustainable travel to university, and it's not just everyone going in a car, and then it's tremendously bad for the environment. But at the same time, we want to make sure that they can get to university on time, and it's not an inconvenience for them. So I'd be really, really welcome to hear more views around that. Perhaps it's something we can discuss in the next Student Voice.
How are you actively trying to get students involved in the union, for example the Student Voice, or anything else that is happening on campus this year?
Okay, so so when we're out, when we're talking to students, we're actively promoting these things. So for the very first Student Voice, what I was doing is I was going around the campus with myself with posters going up all around the campus. We're doing new things, like so making sure these advertisements are going up on splash screens as well. We're also expanding things like Student Voice. So we have a new campus down in London. I want to make sure that students down there can interact just in the same way, but also at the same time I really want to make sure that distance learning students that are learning online or they're learning from home, I want to make sure that they can actually go and they can interact with Student Voice. So we're looking at new technology at the moment. Hopefully that's in place for trimester 2. So if you're a student and you can't make it into campus that day, for example, you can actually, it's a software that's quite similar to Skype, and you can just launch yourself into that. So we're expanding that. So that's some of the stuff I'm doing around and seeing how we promote it. I'm also talking to our staff every day around how we can better promote our democratic events, because they are the events that are actually most important to what we do. We're a democratic organisation, so these events should be considered top priority. So.
Okay.
Calendars have been set up for each of the sabbatical officers for certain purposes, and I personally have asked you all to keep these updated with any relevant information of what you're doing at any time of the day, annual leave and things like that. Have you been doing this?
Yes.
Good. Why are there gaps? What are you doing when you're not out with meetings and annual leave and things like that? So when nothing's scheduled, what is it that you do?
So I'm either answering emails or going out talking to students and doing stuff like that. There's bits of research that I do in those gaps as well. So for example, one of the big things is around summer support, which we talked about earlier. So it's looking at some of the data that we've got from institutions around that and really creating that report. Another thing that I was doing recently in those gaps was going out and talking to students about their governing bodies and how visible do they think that is, and seeing ways in which we can improve that.
Okay.
That concludes the questions that I have. So if you would like to take a few minutes, is there anything that you would like to say to your students at this point?
Just thank you for a fantastic trimester two. It's been fantastic working with them. I think we're off to a great start. Some of the things that to look out for is we'll be asking students around the university has a project that they're looking to create a student hub in Paisley, and then if it works in Paisley, they want to roll that out to other campuses. So I'd be really willing to get some students' views in that. They'll be changing the library as well. So it's really important that we have information around that, and also for them to keep their eye out for some of the IT focus group meetings that we'll be doing. So if students want to see better software, better course materials on an electric presence, or even stuff like better Wi-Fi, better machines, better computers, come along to those groups, come along to those focus groups, and make sure your voice is set.
Okay, thank you very much for that.